All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. It's so good to have another live Electus Society training. I know it's been a while, but I'm really excited to talk about this topic today, which is the seven ancient mirrors of relationship and mastering emotional trigger. Great seeing you, David. What we're going to be talking about today is all about mastering emotional triggers. That we get triggered all the time by different people, but I'm also going to be sharing with you something that I've really learned about this ancient sect called the Essenes. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But because I'm going to publish this video and put it on live and on YouTube, some people who may be watching this training may never even heard of me. And for those of you who are in Elective Society, you know me quite well. Again, my name is Tim Paul Duffy. I founded Elective Society, and what is our mission? It's really to develop conscious leaders. What does consciousness really represent? It's awareness, right? It's connecting with the higher self, the best version of you, as well as teaching you real world skills. I've been doing life coaching, leadership training for almost 2 decades now. I was part of the team to help grow the National Society of Leadership and Success, one of the largest collegiate leadership societies in the country, to over 1 million members. I managed and coached over 600 people, and then I got involved with Landmark Worldwide, which specializes in transformational learning to help people have breakthroughs in their life. And I was did their programs. I was a coach. I was a head coach, and I've coached over 400 people and having breakthroughs. So that's just a little bit about my background. So what are going to be the learning outcomes of this training? Part one, I'm going to talk all about emotional triggers as well as fears. What's the definition of a trigger? Something that I've never heard of called sideways grief. We're going to have a discussion. I love to have anybody who's watching this live to be able to share who are the people that are truly triggering you and why. You don't have to use their names, but again, this is all part of the self-awareness. And then we're going to do a deep dive in what are people's greatest fears. Then part two is all about the Essenes and what I learned about them. I've been kind of obsessed with this ancient, mystical Egyptian Jewish society that lived during the time of Jesus. But I'll tell you a little bit more about them. But it's really Greg Braden who talked about these seven types of mirrors of relationships. And when you look at these relationships, there's questions that you can ask yourself to help as part of the self-discovery of who you are, why you do the things that you do, why you think the way you do. And then I'll end with some practical tools and some action steps because I want to deliver on that promise. How can you help master your emotional triggers? I want to give a special shout out to Isa Riano. If you guys are not familiar with Isa, she's an Electus Society member. She recommended this topic to me, and I'm so excited to be able to finally present it. And we also did a training together. For those of you who haven't seen it, you could watch it on YouTube. It's the leadership lessons from different parenting styles because Isa is really passionate about psychology and empowering people. And a lot of the things that I talk about in Elective Society and leadership had to do with parenting, which is something she was studying. And so now she's also been studying about emotional triggers and helping people. So she says, let's do a training on that. So thank you. This wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for her recommendation. So thank you, Isa. So part of the monthly leadership library series is all about, give me 1 second, is about a leadership library series. So there's always like a book that we really want to cover in these different topics. And the source for a lot of this material, not all, comes from this author, Greg Braden. If you don't know who he is, he just wrote a new book. He's a New York Times bestselling author. His really philosophy is trying to bridge science and spirituality. He's a geologist by trade, but has had an extensive career working in a lot of different industries, but now he uses his time and talent to help bridge that gap. But he wrote this book that's very, very old. It's called About Walking Between the Worlds, The Science of Compassion. And the reason why is because I had saw a video where Greg Braden talked about these seven Essene mirrors, And so this was the book that was the source of that. So of course, you know me, I can't just listen to what I heard here on YouTube. I want to go to the source and I want to learn directly. So I'm going to pull out some pieces from this book to share with all of you so you can help yourself in terms of your increase your self-awareness as well as releasing those emotional triggers. So as we start with all of our Elective Society trainings, it's a little 2-minute grounding meditation for all of us, including myself, to get grounded and present. I know some people who might watch this video might want to skip this part, but again, it's all for our own uh, uh, benefit to really like get down and get present so that we can absorb the content of this material and I can help deliver to the best way possible. So I'm going to turn off my camera and play this 2-minute guided meditation. Let's start right now. Go.
Welcome to this mindful moment of stillness. Let's take these next 2 minutes to find peace and presence within ourselves. First, I want you to find a comfortable seat. Feel free to sit on a chair, on the floor, or anywhere you feel grounded and at ease. Gently close your eyes or lower your gaze, whatever feels right for you. Now, take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Feel the air moving through your nostrils, filling your lungs, and then leaving your body. Allow your breathing to find its natural rhythm without trying to change or control it. As we enter into this moment of stillness, give yourself permission to be here, fully, in the now. This is your time, a precious pause from the hustle of your day. I invite you to bring your attention to your thoughts. As thoughts come into your mind, simply observe them. Imagine they are like clouds passing in the sky, coming and going, without you needing to hold on to them. If you find your mind wandering, it's okay. It's natural. Gently guide your focus back to your breath, feeling the rise and fall of your chest, or the air entering and exiting your nostrils. Remember, there is no right or wrong way to do this. It's all about observing, not judging. You're simply noticing what's happening within you, moment by moment. As we come to the end of this meditation, take one more deep breath in and out. Bring a gentle smile to your face, acknowledging the peace you've brought to yourself in just these 2 minutes. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes or lift your gaze. Take this sense of calm and mindfulness with you as you continue with your day. Thank you for joining me in this mindful moment of stillness. May you carry this calmness and presence with you.
Namaste. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I just want to shout out special thanks to Mindful Breaks. It's a YouTube channel. I love the guy's voice for these grounding meditations. So let's jump in. Let's talk about emotional triggers and fears. So what are emotional triggers? They're specific situations where people or a word that somebody says or a smell, it just evokes this strong emotional and psychological reaction. What kind of reactions? Where they're sourced? They're usually from past experience that you had, some memories or the big T word, some trauma. So some strong emotions. I use some images from that popular Disney movie, Inside Out, where you can get really angry, you get really sad, or you just have a lot of fear and anxiety. Okay. But here's something that I learned about because of Isa. I had never heard of this term, something called sideways grief. I experienced it, but I didn't know that there was actual label for it. So what is sideways grief is when you're experiencing some kind of loss and you're getting emotionally triggered, but it's either like anger or irritability, but it's because of some seemingly unrelated event. So here's the perfect example. You walking around and you see this couple and they're just being romantic, displaying affection, and suddenly it's like they're just expressing love to each other, and suddenly you're getting really angry and upset by it. You're like, wait, why should you get so angry, upset by just a couple wanting to be out in public and wanting to love each other? Shouldn't you just feel like awe inspired and oh, that's so nice? Or it could be the opposite. You see that instead of being like, oh, that's so lovely, like you experience this deep sadness. It's because there's some other event that has happened to you and you're seeing that event and it's triggering you. And it's called sideways grief because it's like unrelated. You didn't even expect it, but it's something that you're experiencing that you just don't necessarily have the awareness. And so then I really wanted to share, ask all of you, whoever wants to feel free to share and unmute your microphone. It's who are the people that in your life that really trigger you, right? That he either have upset you or bother you. There's something about them that you don't know what it is. They irritate you or whatever it is. What is it? Why do you think that is? And hopefully we'll, if you don't know, I still love for you to share, but we'll hopefully answer some of those questions by the rest of this training. So again, I'd recommend you don't use actual names, but let's just, feel free. Who would like to share? Either raise your digital hand or unmute yourself. I'd love for you to tell me who has triggered you, whether it could be in your personal life, your family, your friends, or maybe it's even your workplace. How about I call on some people? Kieran, how about you be a volunteer? Is there anybody that you've experienced in your life that's either triggered you or upset you? Feel free to unmute yourself. And if you're unavailable, I'll ask Yomerly. Yomerly, are you available? I'd love to hear if there's anybody that's been in your life that has triggered you.
Um, oh, there's a people that have triggered me and
Hmm.
set me um, feel like lately, um, I've been kind of triggered by, guess, kind of, um, like some of my, fellow like classmates at like
Uh,
during my college class, uh, and at my university, and like, I guess, even though I don't know them
hmm.
that well. But like I guess um maybe like the kind of feeling that I have to like kind of shrink or like kind of censor myself in some ways when
Got
I'm like certain like events at my university
it.
um with like other like my other peers. It kind of um makes me feel like I can't express myself really, and like
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I totally get it. So you experience emotional triggers from your classmates, right? Your peers. There's something that they say or they do that causes a reaction for you. And what I'm hearing is that you tend to silence yourself. It's like you want to censor yourself. You want to be quiet. You don't feel safe in expressing yourself whenever they're talking or sharing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, got it. Now, again, we won't necessarily know the complete answer, but as we go through this presentation, Yomerly, feel free to post in the chat or raise your digital hand. I want to hear if there's any aha moments that you hear with respect to these triggers, okay? And I'm just going to call on, oh, Kieran, go ahead. you're available now.
Oh yeah, hi everyone. Um, to answer your question, I think people in my life that like trigger or upset or bother me,
Mhm.
I feel like honestly it could be a mix of a lot of different people and situations. Sometimes it could be my workplace.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes like certain people when they have authority.
Oh, people, positions of power can really trigger you,
I
right?
would say that just 'cause when you feel like you have a voice and you want to speak for what's right, but
Mm,
at the same time, you're balancing a level of professionalism versus what you think is the right thing to do. And sometimes when you try to express that opinion
mm,
to
mm,
someone that is in a position of power, they may not understand it and they would tend to dismiss it rather than fully acknowledging the point that's being made because
mm.
they think like, why are you questioning this? Why why are you trying to like undermine me, if that makes sense?
No, it makes perfect sense, and we're going to talk about that. You see, I've been in a position of management, Kieran, and you're in you're in the hot seat. You know, you're responsible, and so you come up with ideas and stuff like that.
But at the same time, you're not given much respect because you don't make as much money compared to someone that is in a higher position of power. So then it's like it's hard for
Well,
you to
yes,
really
what you're
do
describing is
anything.
you feel not secure, you don't feel confident or powerful to like share an idea. They're in a position of power. You're having legitimate questions and concerns, and they like, oh, they're dismissive of it. Like, I have this plan. Why are you throwing questions or challenging
Yeah,
me, right?
exactly.
Yeah, and so I think that's a very, very powerful thing that happens a lot in companies and teams and stuff like that. And my only invitation for you is, yes, they are in a position of power, but a good leader, maybe they need to join Electus Society, Kieran, and learn how we talk about communication. The best thing that you could do is try to understand people, right? And so they're just not really understand, or maybe they're so full of fear themselves that they want the plan to work that instead of viewing your questions as something helpful, they're viewing it as threatening their power,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So again, just recognize. I know that I wanted to be in positions of power because I had an insecurity. I wanted to be that boss. I wanted to be that power, and because I wanted everything to be perfect. And again, it takes a lot of experience in leadership and management to recognize that is not the role. That's not your job. You can be a great individual contributor, and sometimes those people get promoted because they want to be the best, right? So they're trying to move up that ladder. But guess what? That doesn't make them good managers, right? And so Elected Society really tries to do that. That was great sharing. Thanks so much, Kieran, for that feedback of those triggers. And let's see as we go throughout this presentation if there's any of these things that we talk about the triggers that kind of remind you either of yourself or your boss. Okay. And Yanira, I'm just looking at some of your comments. Like you're trying to go against them, but you are just questioning something that maybe be done wrong or just want to understand something. Exactly. Managers and leaders should simply, whenever somebody's asking them a question or understanding, you should be able to just repeat it and understand. That people are constantly trying to do their best. And what if, Yanira, that you have a question or a concern for that team thing? The best thing that you could do is to share that because even if they decide and dismiss it, like in the case of Kieran, and they're like, what are you talking about? At least you had the confidence and power to share a question or concern. It takes a lot of courage to do so. And you need to have that practice because I've had a lot of bosses, some good, some bad. They were operating on fear. And my team members were always so shocked, like, Tim, why did you say something? You know that it was going to upset them. And I said, listen, I'm being employed by this job and they're paying me for my talents and abilities and my brain and to contribute. And if I think that we're going to drive off a cliff and have a concern, my job is to share that concern. But if the manager or the leadership decides that they don't have that same concern, then guess what? I can now wash my hands of it. I can say, at least I expressed my concern. It's up to you guys as the leaders and the decision makers to decide whether or not you want to move forward or not. And guess what? Guess what will happen? We'll either I'll be turned out to be correct, or I could be wrong. But you let go of it, so you remove that charge. But again, my invitation for all of you who are watching this video or elect a society is don't stop advocating. Advocate, even share your concern. And as long as you can do that, you're doing great. Okay. And Kieran, I noticed you said I advocate on behalf of my coworkers all the time, and you're by yourself, and for yourself. I think that's great, and that's what we should all do. Okay. Let's keep going for the rest of the training. So I want to share with you guys about my big trigger. Some of you guys who are seeing a lot of the videos in Electa Society know about this example I'm about to give. This was in my training about, I think it's like a level 2 training about how to heal relationships in your life, whether it's family, loved ones, and stuff like that. So this happened many years ago. I'm talking about the 2010, 2011. I was planning my wedding, right? And I was really struggling on who to invite to this wedding that I was going to have with my wife. And I remember traveling with my wife to Canada and her family, and we were in Canada, and there was this little birthday party for one of our relatives, and it was an aunt, and she had this little boy, and the little boy, the aunt just wanted to dance, right? And this little boy was just crying all the time, I want my mommy, I want my mommy. And I was getting so angry, and I'm like, why doesn't this kid just let his mother go dance on the dance floor? It's like her party, and he's like, I want my mommy, mommy. And I pulled him tied to the side. I'm like, can you calm down? Can you relax? Like it's okay. Like she's fine. She's just there. And he's like, no, no. And I was getting angry and upset. Eventually, his mom, the aunt, came in, grabbed the boy, and brought him away. And I'm like, man, this crybaby boy just gets whatever he wants, just if he cries and stuff like that. And it really bothered me so much that I told my wife, I don't want that little kid at my wedding. Okay. Like that's how angry I was. And so it really bothered me. But at that time, I was doing self-awareness. I was doing therapy. Some of you guys know how I went through a depression, and I had this shamanic empathic healer named Gary Spalansky who cured me of my depression within one session. And so I started working with him for many, many years. And I came back to him and I had a session. I said, hey, Gary, I was really upset about this little boy who was crying all the time. And he helped release some of my anger regarding to it. And after he did some shamanic empathic healing and releasing, I'm like, Gary, why was I so upset by this little boy and this so triggered? And he's like, Tim, it doesn't make a logical sense why you're upset, but it makes perfect emotional sense why you're upset. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? And he says, you see, again, now that I know it's called sideways grief, I was really sad. If anybody have you seen that training and know about my parenting and my upbringing, I was a neglected child. I didn't really have my mother around. I didn't have my father around. And so I was really alone and abandoned. And so to me, when they were still there, they existed, but they were both working and I just had to survive on myself. And so when I saw this little boy and got so angry, it was actually reminding me of the loss that I had of my own childhood, where I would cry and I didn't have anybody to talk to me or comfort me and nurture me. So in my end, my own ego was just trying to tell this little boy, shut up, just grow up, man up, because that's what I had to do because I didn't have anybody to cry to. And so I wouldn't have known that if it wasn't for Gary, who was acting as a therapist to help me discover. And he did an exercise with me, which I've actually done with some of the other clients that I've coached, where it's like, you need to go back and talk and connect with your inner child, right? There's a part of you inside your body that's like that inner child that holds on to these emotions and memories. And he just did this visualization exercise for me to say, okay, imagine this. What happened? Okay, now I want you to imagine yourself as a little child. Now I want you to actually talk to yourself talk to your child. What can you do? How can you protect him? How can you take away this burden? And you're like talking to yourself as if you're your own child and your own parent to your child. And I was able to like cry and release it and let go and let my inner child to be a child again. So it was a very, very powerful experience. So that is just one of the different ways that you can actually release these emotional triggers. And so that goes into the next kind of topic is what are our biggest fears and how do they end up manifesting as these emotional triggers? And so Greg Braden in his book, that I have right here, The Walking Between the Worlds, The Science of Compassion, uh, he said that there's three major fundamental fears that people have. And how I remember him is I think of like the airport, like, the security, the TSA. So the first T stands for trust and safety. Okay. The second S stands for either self-esteem or self-worth. And the last one is A stands for abandonment. So these are the biggest fears of people. And I actually, remember reading like at one point like isn't like the biggest fear is not dying, it's like public speaking. And it's like, yes, why is that the biggest fear for some people is public speaking? It's because your fear that you're going to be judged, right? That you're going to be valued less worth and people will like reject you. These have to do with trust, safety, self-esteem, self-worth, and abandonment, right? So it's actually related to these fundamentals. And so, what would it look like if you have a big fear of trust, right? Well, these are the things that you would say in your head, right? Like, I don't trust anybody. I don't feel safe. I can't rely on anyone. I'm worried that this is going to fail. I'm worried something bad will happen. I need reinsurance. I'm afraid to lose control, right? These are all legitimate fears that people actually deal with. And I have an image in a lot of these like leadership rope courses that people go on in these real retreats. They're like, sometimes your obsession with lack of trust can really be stifling for a team and for performance. And so they do these different exercises like and people are terrified to just let go of the idea of doing a trust fall. Like we will catch you. And some people are just so terrified, but it's affecting their performance. So if they can learn to actually deal with these fears and overcome them, it could be a game changer. So that's trust. I definitely had trust issues, right? And how that showed up for me is based on my childhood, negligent, poverty, all this other stuff. That's what led me to become a prepper because I was like prepared for the end of the world. We didn't have things, and I'm like, we need to have materials in case something bad happens. That's just a lack of a fear of trust, a fear of safety. When it came to me being a manager, right? When I at one point earlier in my career, I was a micromanager. I'm like, you have to do it like this. I don't trust you. Do it this way so that it'll be perfect. And so it was so stifling, and my team was I was overly critical because I wanted all of them to be perfect because I was afraid something bad was going to happen. So do you see, it didn't provide me any opportunity for them to share their ideas, share their feedback, try something new, experiment. Now, as a new team leader, I'm like, yeah, tell me your ideas. Let's try it out. Again, because I've let that go. Okay. But a lot of people still struggle with that. So the next one is self-esteem, self-worth. Again, a lot of people don't feel good enough, right? And these are the phrases that they would say to themselves. I don't feel I matter. I'm not good enough. I'm going to disappoint people. I'm worried that I'm going to fail. Have you guys heard of imposter syndrome? Like you got promoted to this position, you're like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. All these people are relying on me. Who am I to actually talk about this stuff? I don't feel worthy. I'm not as good as other people. I don't think that I'll measure up, right? So these are real issues that people have as these big fears. And then the third and final one is abandonment, right? People, we tend to be very tribal, right? We have a family unit, you have a community, and one of the biggest fears for some people is like they feel completely alone. They say that nobody likes me or nobody loves me, no one understands me, no one cares about me, nobody wants me. I feel invisible. I'm afraid that they'll leave me. I always get left out. So, do you see how these fears of abandonment can take control over our lives and really affect how we perceive and survive in the world? And that's one of some of the most interesting things that I've learned is that we're all just trying to survive, and we're just trying to do different things in order to get that survival, and our life experiences, our childhood traumas shape us on how we want to survive. But just because Greg Braden talked about these three big fears, I wanted for all of you who are elected society members and those who are watching this video to actually go in a little bit deeper. So I wanted to give you guys a little bonus, a little extra, because I think that what I'm seeing in these big fears are patterns where I see in other places of what I've learned. Remember where I've done trainings about healing past trauma, emotional mindfulness, wellness? Well, we talk about the chakras, right? And so when you talk about the chakras, well, guess what? Different chakras are related to the endocrine system, right? A part of your body. And people who tend to have emotional issues about certain areas of their life tend to associate or manifest issues with that part of your body. So again, your root chakra, that has to do with survival and trust. I'm like, oh my goodness, that goes back to our biggest fears. Look at the solar plexus chakra, where I call the abdomen, wisdom and power and self-esteem. I could tell you whenever I didn't feel nervous or I wasn't good enough, I felt all those butterflies in my stomach. I was just very, very sensitive in that stomach area because it had to do with self-power and healing. Remember when I shared that story, Gary Spolansky, when I suffered through that depression? What was my issue? And he, remember, he did these weird kind of shamanic empathic healings where he could feel what I was feeling and vocalized all the anger and rage that I had in my self-esteem in my stomach. And I told people that it felt like a poisonous syringe was being sucked out of me. And once that was removed, my stomach felt light. And I thank Gary. I'm like, okay, wow, thank you so much for removing that for me. What the hell happened? He's like, oh, Tim, you're trying to pretend to be someone else. You're not really listening to your higher self. You're just doing what to please your bosses and managers. You're not listening to who you are. And now you've discovered that and you have to let that go. And I'm like, oh, mind blown, right? For other people, it's healing of the heart. They have a broken heart. They feel abandoned. They feel left alone. And so that's why it's these issues where they just don't feel loved. So now I'm kind of seeing that pattern that these issues come up for all people. And just because you have maybe some issues that are greater than others and emotional triggers, it doesn't mean that we all haven't experienced variations of this. I think we all have, but some just more than others. And then remember in my earlier trainings, I talked about Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. And of course, the first one is psychological needs. People need to feel safe. They need air, food, and water, shelter, clothing. And then once they have that, then they need personal security about their employment, about resources. So that's trust and safety. And then instead of going to self-esteem and love and belonging like the chakras, it's a little bit of different order. They call it love and belonging. You need that friendship. You need to feel a sense of belonging to a community, a tribe, a team. And then you also yearn for that esteem, to just be respected, to have some status, to have some recognition. And then self-actualization is the highest of once you have achieved all these, you just try to be the best version of yourself, and then you start transcending that and helping other people be the best versions of themselves. So remember how I said I wanted to give you a little bonus, go into a little bit more detail? Again, this is not related to Greg Braden walking between worlds, but I did want to share with you that there's this man by the name of Chase Hughes. I've heard him on different podcasts. He's an author. He's a former military intelligence officer. He studied, psychology and human behavior, persuasion, and profiling. And he's created this manual called like the Behavior Ops Manual. Like this is something that like CIA officers, they have to really be learn how to like influence people. And he also created this other book called, the 6 minute X-ray book. What is it called? The 6 minute X-ray, rapid behavior profiling. And so I have this book. I find it very interesting, but I've listened to his interviews, and he basically says you need to have a map of the human needs in order to connect with people and influence them. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so great stuff. And he basically says that there's primary needs, the most common, and then there's secondary needs, which are kind of related. So The first one, he says people need to feel significant. And guess what that's related to? Self-esteem. I need to feel important. I fear that I don't matter. Another one he said is approval and recognition. You need to seek the approval of others. And I would say that's kind of even similar to acceptance. You want to be accepted by others, but that has to do with abandonment. I need to be accepted. I need to be a part of the team. Please don't judge me. Please like me. That's their people's our biggest fears. So now I'm seeing the pattern of this is human behavior. This is what it is to be human. But then he says that there's other secondary human needs. And this is what I found very interesting. Intelligence. Have you ever had some people that they love to actually show how smart they are? Whether they went to an Ivy League school, they'll say, yes, when I attended Harvard school, like, Harvard College, you're like, why do you need to keep mentioning Harvard? You could just say in college, but it's that they want to demonstrate that they're smart. Because guess what? At some point in their life, maybe they had to survive and they wanted to, or their fear was to be stupid, or someone called them out for being stupid. And so, if that's their biggest fear, then guess what? They're going to compensate it and they're going to try to survive to be the most intelligent. Use big or fancy words to impress people with their intelligence and vocabulary. So, I'm like, wow, this is really helping me understand people. And have you guys ever recognized people who actually their need is pity? That they're like, oh man, you don't know how bad I have it. You don't know how much I'm struggling. You don't know how much I have no finances. Like, wow, it's almost like that's what they need to constantly people to recognize, wow, you really have it bad. Oh wow. Oh wow. Like that's what they need. They want pity parties, right? And then some people they need strength and power. I need to be strong and powerful because I can't have anybody who challenges me. So again, just take the reverse of these. Somebody who yearns for strength and power is to have a fear that they have no power, right? So again, I hope that you guys enjoyed this and find it as interesting as I am. I haven't read the book yet. I've just listened to Chase Hughes' podcast, but I thought this was relevant to understand human psychology and human needs and human fears. Okay. So this is the recap for the first section that we had. So we've talked about emotional triggers, right? These are situations or people that really get us angry or upset or just a strong emotional reaction. And sideways grief is when we're experiencing the loss of something and then we see something and we're getting emotionally triggered by it. But it doesn't really seem to almost make sense. It seems like a completely unrelated event. That's because you don't realize that you're suffering from a loss of some kind, right? And that can show up as anger or irritability. Remember the biggest fears, TSA, trust, safety, and self-esteem. Oh, well, trust and safety is one, self-esteem or self-worth is another, and the last one is abandonment. And according to Chase Hughes, you can break them down even further. Significance, approval, and acceptance, intelligence, pity, strength, and power. These are the human needs maps. Okay? So I hope this is helpful. So now let's jump into part two. Again, if you guys have any comments, you have any questions, feel free to raise your digital hand, unmute yourself. You're more than welcome to chime in. So now part two is about Essenes and the seven mirrors. So who are the Essenes? Okay, the Essenes are some interesting people. Okay, we have some historical records of where we've discovered these people. So during the time of different authors have written about different history. We have Philo of Alexandria and Josephus. These are people who like used to write a lot about a different history, and they would talk about these people who are called the Essenes, or another word for them to describe their community was the Therapeutae, right? Or the Therapeutai, right? It's like, and what that means is they're the healers. They're Egyptian Jewish spiritual society. And what's so fascinating right now, they have from the historical records that they lived between 150 BC to 70 CE, but scholars argue. And if you for those of you who have really been with Electus Society a lot, we talked in level 3 of Electus Society trainings all about scientific sources and non-scientific sources. And I really discovered from Drumbo Melchizedek in this famous book, The Ancient Secret Flower of Life. Again, some of people would say, well, that's not really truly scientific, but that's where I've read it. So I'd always love to give my sources. He talked about the Essenes were an ancient mystery school that started from all the way from Akhenaten, right? He was one of the pharaohs in the 1300 BCE that basically tried to move the whole Egyptian society instead of worshiping all these gods to one god. And he created these mystery schools, which then led to the Essenes, and it's speculated and debated among scholars that they say, what if Jesus, Mother Mary, Joseph, who were of Nazarene, what if they are actually part of that tribe or that group of Essenes? So again, if you go online and research, you'll see the scholars debate it all the time, but I'm just sharing with you additional information to do your own research. So I'm fascinated by that. And so, well, where did they really learn the most about the Essenes, this group of people, these ancient mystics? They found these scrolls in these caves of Qumran, right? If I'm pronouncing it correctly, right, in Israel, and they found these caves, and they had all these different scrolls, including copper scrolls and like etched in metal. Like it was really intense. Some of them were paper or whatever it is, and they discovered, and these are called the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Because they're located next to the Dead Sea. And what's really cool about it is like all these ancient writings about these Essenes, whether it's like their community rules, how they lived. There's a famous scroll called the War Scroll. And so when I first learned where Greg Braden talked about the Essene mirrors, guess what I did? I'm like, I want to read all the Dead Sea Scrolls, And I actually, this is a copy of my book that I have on my bookshelf, but I'm only about, it's like several hundred pages, like 300, 500 pages. I'm only like one quarter in. I'm only 100 pages in, but it's very fascinating to learn about these people. And what was really disappointing was that when I was reading it, I went to the index. I'm like, I want to learn all about these seven Eastern mirrors that Greg Braden talks about, but I couldn't find anything in the Dead Sea Scrolls that talks about these Essene mirrors. And then what I soon discovered is I learned all about their culture, but I'm going to come back to this. Hold on. Uh, uh, it was actually, let me just share with you right here. He actually discovered that Greg Braden also read a lot about the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt. And this is where they found a lot of different gospels, stuff that didn't make it into the Bible, right? And according to these texts, again, talking all about what the early Christians believed. And so this is where he gets the sources. I've read some of these sources, but I have to read a lot more. Like there's the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, etc. Very similar stuff and interesting stuff. And guess what I've read in some of those texts? There's similarities between that and the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I'm reading right now. So it's really, really cool. So let me tell you just a little bit more about the Essenes. I hope that you guys find this as fascinating as I do. These are a group of people that they were very communal. They all shared property. Their main job was farming. What were their values? Again, I find these values similar to Electa Society: truthfulness, humility, patience, justice, loving and kindness, very charitable, and practicing discernment. That's something that I've been trying to learn, in my later years of life. They were deeply religious and very spiritual people. It was all about their seeking God within, and basically with your whole heart and your whole entire soul. They were very devout. They didn't work on the Sabbath. They were very clean. They had to bathe themselves before the meals. And some texts say that they were celibate. No, they just believed that sex is very sacred. It's a life force energy. And so when you actually have sex, you basically are sharing that for the purpose of creation. Why? Two people love each other, and then they're in that loving union. That's when a soul enters, right? And so they believe that should only be used if you're actually going to procreate. And that's to me very similar to what I've read from other non-scientific sources like Ascended Masters, that your sex and life force energy is something very powerful and should not be wasted. So I found that very, very interesting. They were also vegetarian, which is funny. I'm also a vegetarian. Makes me wonder whether I was, an Essene in a past life. They don't eat live creatures, anything from larvae, bees, anything in water. Nope, nope. They were very charitable. What did that mean? That they believe that if you worked over the course of the month, you should donate some of the proceeds of what you did in terms of that work 1 or 2 days a month. And what's so funny is 2 days a month, there's sometimes, with February, there's like 27, 28 days, depending on leap year or whatever, or 29 days. Some months have 31 days, 30 days, whatever it might be. Guess what? 2+ days a month is like 6 to 10% of your earnings. So again, wow, even tithing goes back all the way to that time period, right? Hi, Elected Society members and visitors. I wanted to pause the training, especially because we were talking about charity and giving back. Well, there is an opportunity for you to become a supporter of Elected Society. Elected Society is a 501(c)(3) non-for-profit, and we're all committed to the vision of creating conscious leaders with real-world skills. And if you give a monthly contribution, either $5 or $10, you will download and receive over $2,000 worth of gifts. And I'm going to share them what they are. So the first one is my first book that I wrote. It was called The Oracle: Ancient Wisdom for Changing Your Life in the World. It's not available anywhere. You can get access to my own digital copy. The second is I have a professional network that I like to give you access to. Lawyers that I've used, coaches that I've used, experts on different topics and areas, nonprofit consultants, etc., as well as I have a whole section on trusted influencers who I listen to learn information about the economy, about business and the world, and it's constantly expanding. The other thing is I love to give annual gifts to supporters. Right now it's mostly digital gifts. I will read books, take my own notes and summaries, and give my comments and feedback. So here was a couple of books that I've reviewed and created notes for. I also did a training on AI. And is it hype or real? And what can we learn all about artificial intelligence? And at the end, I gave supporters the top 100 tools that to use in terms of AI, and I gave my feedback on those top 10 tools. So again, those are the types of gifts that I can have. For those who are also interested in personal and professional coaching, I do that annually for those who are interested, as well as job interviews. I used to interview hundreds of candidates in my old jobs, and so I was trained on top grading, the top method that Fortune 500 company used to hire employees. And so having that training has really helped me to help train other people how to do an excellent job interview. So those are also available. If you'd like to make a tax deductible donation, we would love it and appreciate it. It's $5 a month. If you're a working professional, you can do $10 a month. If you just want to give any donation whatsoever, you're more than welcome to scroll at the bottom of the page and just give a one-time donation. If for some reason you don't have any funds and you'd like to donate your time, maybe you'd like to send me an email, you could write a testimonial. We could actually do a training together so it doesn't all have to be about money. Donation can be your time, energy, and effort. Simply reach out to me, contact me on how you'd like to help support Elected Society. All right, let's get back to the training. Thanks so much. Bye. The other things that they believed in reincarnation, that the soul was internal and that we were reborn into different bodies. And so, because all the history that we have from the Essenes comes from these writers like Josephus and Philo from Alexandria, there's a quote from like the written stuff about the Essenes. I just think this is kind of badass. So that's why I wanted to share it with you. Because they believed in reincarnation, there was a moment when they were being tortured by Roman soldiers, and Josephus writes that it was so weird because these Essenes, this group, this Egyptian mystical Jewish group, they were smiling, and they were while they were being tortured, they were like making fun, mildly deriding their tormentors, and they were just cheerfully resigned that their souls, that they would confident that they would receive it again, like because they had no fear, right? They'd come back to life because they believed in reincarnation. And so it just makes me think sometimes some of the most powerful leaders, is it that they're able to do such scary or intense things or powerful things because they believe that the soul's internal and whatever could happen to them, that they don't want to do any bad things because they don't want to, face the karma of reliving another life, of having that same human experience. So I just thought that was very interesting. I hope you find that as fascinating as I did. Okay, so what are the seven mirrors? Okay, so there's seven of them. The first one is the mirror of the present moment. The second one is the mirror of judgment. The third is the mirror of loss. And what does that mean, loss? It means when something could also, you lose something that you either forgot about, or you've given it away, or you've had it taken from you. The other mirror is of a compulsion or addictions. And sometimes they even call it a mirror of another version of loss. Why? Because when you're addicted or to something, or you have this addictive behavior or compulsive behavior, guess what happens? It takes over your life and you end up losing something else that you value most, right? Haven't you heard the stories of people who are addicts who will do everything? They destroy their relationships with their family, their loved ones. They sell the most precious goods, family relics, just so that they could get that fix. And so again, these are mirrors of self-awareness that were help to help identify and learn and grow. The mirror of the caretakers, like whoever you had, whether it's your parents, but there's something mirror that's related to your heavenly Father or the creator of the universe or whoever it might be. The other mirror is the dark night of the soul, where people have to go through trials and tribulations. And the final seventh mirror is acceptance and perfection. So I'm going to go through each one of these things. And let me, as we go through of them, Greg Braden gives actual examples of how this shows up. So as I go through them, I wanted to see if this resonates for you for like getting emotional triggers. Okay. So the first one is called the mirror of the present moment. Okay. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you're in a very irritable mood, maybe when you're driving, and because you're angry, then you start to experience other drivers who are also angry. And it's like some other people just are not angry and they just drive and they just mosey along, get to their destination. But then, the moment that you're in a rush and frustrated, then you start experiencing all these delays and rush hour traffic. So, again, to me, that's the perfect example of the most common, which is the mirror of the moment. And so, what is the mirror of the moment? Is how you are internally, how what you're thinking and you're feeling will end up manifesting in your environment. And so, again, we could go off in a very like spiritual or even a scientific way, where it's like we're conscious beings. So therefore, that what we think and we feel, we manifest in this reality. And if you've ever seen some of the level 3 trainings where we talk about consciousness, we've talked about the double slit experiment, where they shoot out an electron through these different slits, and when they're observing it, it hits in this pattern. But then when they actually are not observing it, that electron is shot and it's a wave of possibility. So, are we living in a simulation, a holographic universe? But yet, are we affecting the environment by what we think, what we feel, and what we focus on as conscious beings in this universe? Again, we can go down as a big discussion, but I think it's something interesting. So, what are the two examples that I want to share with you that are hilarious and interesting and insightful that Greg Braden mentioned? So, the first one is it's all related to your fears. So, guess what one of Greg Braden's biggest fears was? Trust, safety. How did that show up to him as a manager? Well, he would always talk to his teams. Hey, here's the report. Please don't be late with that, okay? Or like, so he was always communicating to his employees and team members that he had a fear that something bad was going to happen, that they weren't going to do something right. And he was so frustrated all the time when they just didn't do what they were supposed to do, because he was vibrating, he was operating a way of being of lack of trust, lack of safety. And where this culminated in this epiphany is he had a rule in his household, his own house, that a cat that he loved, you're not allowed on the counters. That's not allowed. And so the cat knew never to go on the counters. But then one day he had to come home early from work, and as soon as he got home and opened up the door at not his regular time, guess what had happened? His cat was on the counter. And he's like, "Oh my goodness, how could this happen? I told you not to do." And so his whole life was mirroring this whole attitude that he can't trust people, they're unreliable. And in this analysis that he says, is my environment reflecting my internal state? And again, after that epiphany that he had, he's like, you know what, cats, he was even talking to a friend, cats are going to be cats. As a survival instinct, they always want to go onto the highest point so they can have a perspective. Like, what are you talking about? Your cats are not going to jump on the counter, right? I know you could train them not to with like tape or some other things, but cats are cats. But you're just trying to control the environment. So it was very, very interesting. So, do you have emotional triggers? Does this show up for you where what you think and feel or your biggest fears are manifested in your environment? And here's this one other story that I have to share with this mirror that I thought was also very interesting. So there was a woman that was like talking with Greg Braden, and this woman said, I was with my family and we were in the living room, and then suddenly we heard this big boom. What happened? and we found in our bathroom a pipe exploded and was squirting water everywhere. Okay. And they're like, oh my goodness. And so they tried to turn off the water, whatever they could do. Okay. And then the next morning, guess what happened? They went into their garage. Boom! What exploded? It was the water heater burst and popped and was leaking water everywhere. They're like, oh my goodness. And so they're like, all right, now we have to go to the store and go shop for a new water heater. And as they get into their car, guess what happens? Boom! Another pipe in their car explodes and starts leaking. And she just couldn't believe it. And then Greg Braden asked the woman, he's like, well, let's talk about this. Is like, can you tell me how's your relationship? Are there any relationships that you're happening in your life that you're struggling or dealing with? Like, oh yeah, like me and my partner in our relationship, yeah, I've had it to here, where I'm having so many problems. He's like, what would you use to describe this relationship with your partner? It's like, oh my goodness, we can't take it anymore. It's like where it's about to burst. And as she said it, he's just smiling at her. He's like, wait a minute. Are you saying that my environment, whether the bursting of the pipe in the bathroom, the water heater, and my car is all related to my relationship right now? He's like, that's what it seems to me. So again, very fascinating. That can't be coincidence, according to this person's perspective or from Greg Braden. But I just thought that was very interesting. Change your emotional state, and you could end up changing your environment. I always love this analogy where it's like, how many of us live based on our fears? And if you were to drop somebody in the middle of the jungle, if they were terrified, they would be terrified and nervous and they would see snakes and almost get bit by the snake. But how would it be if you dropped like a monk, right? Somebody who's worked on their emotional, spiritual well-being, right? And you drop them in the middle of a jungle and they become one with the environment, completely aware and just like have maybe a strong faith that everything's going to work out and that they're protected, you know, could you end up surviving in the jungle? That's the question to you guys. How does your internal state affect your external? Okay, so that's the first mirror. So here's the questions that Greg Braden wants you to answer. Whenever you're into a situation, maybe there's something that's bothering you, you're feeling angry, joyful, fearful, is this what you're experiencing reflecting how you feel at the present moment? Or are people or circumstances displaying this pattern, right? So if you're experiencing something, is it reflecting your internal state? That's just a mirror. Again, to me, this is all part of self-awareness. Is this a trigger, right? Why am I getting upset? Why is this happening in my environment? Again, something to look or examine. Okay, now we're going to go to the second one, which is my favorite, the mirror of judgment. Mm. I always tell the Elective Society community I'm a recovering judgeaholic, okay? Because I used to judge all the time, and I've made a commitment to not judge, right? And even though I made that commitment, it still spills out. It's very, very hard, especially if you're committed to excellence and perfection, and you're like, no, it's not right, etc., etc. So we show this up. This shows up in our environment. So he gives two stories of where this shows up, the mirror of judgment. Um, Greg Braden had a business partner, okay? And in this business partner, he introduced him, he met him, seemed like a very nice guy and stuff like that. And for some reason, he asked him a question. He's like, when's your birthday? And he said, whatever the date was. I don't know what it was, maybe May 17th or something like that. And then guess what Greg Braden said? He's like, oh my goodness, we have exactly the same birthday. And guess what this future business partner said? Oh, look at that. I must be your evil twin, right? And Greg Braden laughed and the other guy laughed, but it's like, notice what he said, I'm your evil twin. He totally disregarded it as a joke. And so Greg Braden was utilizing this business partner and stuff like that while he was out and traveling and guess what happened? There was one day he came back from his travels and he went to go to the ATM to pull out money and there was no money in his bank account. And he's like, wait, what? And then he had to contact the bank. Then he contacted the bank and was like, well, according to this, you signed out or, guess what he discovered? His business partner, whatever he did, forged documents, went into him, came in, depleted all the money out of his bank account. And so he was so angry. And he's like, and he went through all the mirrors, like, how dare this person do this to me? Like, you know, and he's like, okay, let me look through the first mirror. Is what I'm experiencing a reflective of who I am at this moment? And he's like, no, I don't believe I'm being untrustworthy or lack integrity and stuff like that in my environment, but I'm really upset. So it's like maybe it's the second mirror. I get emotionally charged by integrity. Like for him, Greg Braden, that was such a big deal. And I can actually confess to all of you, guess what? Integrity is a big deal for me as well. Why? Because I grew up in a home, negligent parents. I couldn't rely on my mother. You know, did she pick us up on time? Like that just bothered me, making promises and would break those promises. So now I only learned later on in life that when I had business partners, just like Greg Brain did, that it didn't do what they said, I would get angry, like get really emotionally charged and upset. Like, why aren't they doing this? But again, I needed to have that business partner. I needed to understand that I got emotionally charged. And guess what? I learned from that business partner. I had to forgive them, right? They were doing the best thing that they could, even though all my saving was depleted, just like Greg Braden's was, like that happened to him. And so again, these mirrors are helping us to discover a little bit more about ourselves, more about this self-awareness, more about how we judge people so much. So there's going to be one final story with this with respect to this mirror of judgment. Here's the story. So Greg Braden was devastated about having his money, this business partner. They found out, he talked to lawyers like, yes, you have a great case against this business partner if you want to pursue him. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's going to actually take several months of your life if you want to do it. And so he's just really frustrated. He doesn't know what to do. And he comes across, because he lives in, I believe, New Mexico, and he has a lot of friends and people who are Native Americans. And he was talking with one of them, venting about this whole experience, about this business partner, and how he just gets so angry about the lack of integrity and the lack of trust that he had in this partner. And this Native American shared with him a story. He's like, "Well, I want to share with you a story." He's like, "I have a little shop, and one of the things in my shop that I really value, this prized possession, is because like my grandfather had this, hunted the buffalo on this land many, many years ago, and he basically had the head done of the first buffalo that he'd ever killed, for his family, and it passed down generation to generation, and it was something that was a prized possession." And this Native American told Greg Braden this story. He's like, I ended up meeting a woman who was selling jewelry, and she had all this Native American beautiful jewelry. And she says, "Oh my goodness, that head that you have, could I please just borrow it for this display on my store window just for a period of time, just because I think it's perfect?" And of course, this Native American says, "Go ahead. I'm happy to lend you. This is something that's if it can be of use, I'm happy to help you." So he lent them the buffalo head, and guess what happened? A week or two later, he heard nothing. Why hasn't she brought the buffalo head back? And he goes to that store where that woman had the display, and guess what happened? The store is closed, canceled, moved out. The woman is gone, disappeared entirely with that prized possession in his family. And so you can imagine that he was devastated. And so he's telling this to Greg Braden. He's like, "Well, what did you do?" He said, and the Native American friend said, "I did nothing." Why? Because this woman had to live with what she has done, as part of her own karma, right? And so he just said, "Wow, look how like zen you are and handle this like prized possession." And that's what gave Greg Braden the idea to say, "You know what? That's on this business partner who did those actions and stuff like that. I'm not going to pursue it. I'm not going to get emotionally charged." Doesn't mean that he doesn't want to work with people with high integrity, but he just needed to have that human experience. He needed to actually recognize what it's like to be cheated by somebody with lack integrity, so that he can remove that charge, so that he could be Zen, that he'd have that greater awareness. So I thought that was a very, very cool story. So what questions should you ask yourself? Who are the people that really push your buttons? And you have to figure out, like, once you figure out those people are, why? Why do they push your buttons? What's it about them? Is it possible? Are they a reflection of you? Are they a reflection of, who you judge, right? can you release that charge or judgment? And I'm going to actually give you all a confession. I remember how I said I'm like a recovering judgeaholic. I have a family friend that I would visit. And because he was a family friend, I didn't always like to be around this individual. I found him annoying. I found him to be super judgmental. There was like certain things that I couldn't talk about. He was constantly correcting me and all this other kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want to spend time with this person. And I just realized that this individual, wow, I'm really judging the crap out of this family member. And I'm like, wow, are there any mirrors? Is it mirroring me? Is it mirroring something about me that I don't like? Like I don't want to be judgmental. And so it's like, wow. And we're going to talk about a tool later on at the end of this training on how I was able to transform this relationship with this family friend. And guess what it was? It was about changing the way I was being, right? Once I can recognize that I'm judging him, why? Because he's also judgmental too. He's mirroring something that I don't like about myself. So again, my invitation for you is figure out who are these people who you judge. There's something about them that you have to learn. Okay. So a couple more mirrors left. The third mirror is the mirror of loss, something that was forgotten, given, or taken away. And so what this mirror is about is why are we attracted to certain types of people? Okay. And we meet somebody and there's an attraction there and we don't know what it is. It could be somebody with the same sex, the opposite sex, whatever it might be. It's like there's something. Is this person familiar? Why am I gravitating? Why do I really want to connect with this person? And this can cause a lot of problems, right? Especially, and Greg Braden gives a story where he was working with a coworker and he was married, but yet every time he would go out, whether it was for lunch, he'd go to the bank, he would come back to work. He's like, oh my God, I fell in love again. And he would always fall in love with this new person and stuff like that. And it caused really a lot of problems in his relationship. And he even ended up breaking up his relationship because he would always fall desperately in love with these people. And so again, I think this is a very, very important mirror for you to understand is why are we attracted to certain people? And Greg Braden made this discovery. And he says sometimes the reason why we are attracted to certain people has not to do with, oh, I'm in love with them, but it's a mistaken. It's I'm attracted to them because there's something about either myself that I've forgotten, and this person reminds me of that. Or I had something as part of myself that I gave away to someone, or gave away, or I had it taken away from me. And so once he actually had this discovery, he at his job, whenever there was like a couple that were either coworkers that actually were in relationships, they had partners, but they were really attracted together. Guess what? Greg Braden would say, I'd like to invite you guys to sit down. I'd like to do an exercise with you. And I'd like you to figure out why is it that you're attracted to this person? Is it something to do with what you've forgotten or given or taken away? And sometimes they really discovered what that was. And once they recognized that, they didn't ruin their relationships. They didn't break up a happy marriage or home with family and kids because they had that awareness. And what Greg Braden has an example where he was traveling so much doing conferences and he met this woman and he thought that he was in love with this woman and he just wanted to connect with her. He met with her at one of her workshops and they like did all these activities while he was at one of his workshops, and then he said goodbye to her and she left and they just spent some time together and he cried. He's like, wow, why am I missing this woman so much? Like it was just such a strong attraction. Well, guess what? He realized what was it that attracted to him about her was her spontaneity. He was a world traveler, speaking engagements, very rigid, and this woman was carefree. And like that's what he realized that it was given or taken away from him, or he had forgotten about spontaneity. And so that's what really attracted him. And then there was another example where Greg Braden worked in the military with the defense, shield that was defense Star War systems that they were all during the 1980s when it was all about, blasting out missiles out of the sky that Reagan was trying to create. And he met this very, very high up Pentagon official who was like the top of the military. And when he was having a conversation with him, he somebody asked him a question. He's like, "Hey, what did it take for you to get to the top of your position, to be responsible for so many people in the military and stuff like that?" And Greg Braden says this military officer was very open. And he says, what I did had to do was for the Pentagon, as I moved up the ladder, I had to give away parts of myself and have it and I had to have a tremendous amount of sacrifice. And I had to sacrifice my health. I had to sacrifice my relationship with my partner. I had to sacrifice my relationship with my family, all in order to gain this power. And the Pentagon, they own me. Like my whole life and everything about me is the Pentagon, that I needed to give that up in order to get into this position of power. And Greg Braden was like, "Whoa, that's really intense." It's like, well, yeah, that's what he was willing to give up if in order to get to that status of power. And so whenever we give things up and we pretend or lose parts of ourselves, we see others and see some kind of attraction or see some kind of charge. So these are the questions to ask yourself. When you see yourself attracted or drawn to some person, is do they seem familiar? Is why are you attracted to them? Is there some quality about them that you have forgotten, that you've lost in yourself, or you've given away, or you had taken from you? And I actually am going to give you guys a confession right now. Remember, for those of you who are in an elective society, know that my relationship with my wife was had really big ups and downs, and it was stemming from all those childhood traumas that I had from negligent parents. And that's actually one of the common side effects of negligent parents is they tend to have dysfunctional relationships. And one of the things is like I had coworkers or people that I was really attracted to, but I'm like, but they're not attractive. Like I wouldn't want to date them, but there's something about that person that I really want to connect with. Like I just want to be intimate. Like I just want to be a friend. I just want to hug them. I want to be around them. And I'm like, what is this obsession that you have, Tim? Like, what is it about? And I'm like, through these mirrors, I started to discover what it is. It was their innocence. I had my innocence taken away from me when I actually had to be an adult as a little kid. I had to grow up fast. So when I see that innocence, it's like, oh, that reminds me of what I didn't have. So again, if people could use these mirrors to help discover themselves a lot better, it could actually save a lot of hardship and heartache in their relationships with their loved ones. Could even prevent a lot of cheating. It could help a lot of different people. So again, ask yourself whenever you're attracted to a person, what is it that they remind you of? What have you had taken away from you, forgotten, or actually gave away? All right. So the fourth mirror is the mirror of compulsion and addiction. Okay. And so this has to do with all the different types of addiction that there are, and there are a lot. So what are addictions or compulsive behaviors according to Greg Braden? It could be a lot of different things. It could be a relationships, people who are constantly addicted and need to be in love and be in a relationship. They can't be happy unless they're in a relationship. Some people are addicted to power. Some people love to just go shopping all the time. Others, it's like smoking. They need some kind of drug, whatever, give that fix in order to numb themselves. Some people just need the control. They're addicted to control. I can't, to give that feeling that they have that power. Some people, this kind of blew me away, but it actually makes perfect sense. Have you ever noticed that some people could be addicted to poverty, right? They're always talking about how they lack. Oh, I'm addicted to like, yeah, I don't have anything. It almost reminds me of that pity party that we were talking about before from Chase Hughes, where it's like there are people who are just obsessed, a compulsive behavior to always live in a lack of abundance. It's a poverty mindset that they have. There are other people who are just addicted to making money constantly. Some people are addicted to illness. Have you ever met people who are constantly, oh my goodness, I have this thing. They can't stop talking about their ailments, and it just becomes their identity. Like, oh, I'm sick and I have this issue and I have this issue. And it's like, wow, like, why are you just so compulsive and constantly talking about all your illnesses and focusing on it's like you're giving it so much power. And then other people are just addicted to sex. So like they have to constantly have that. So again, I'm not going to ask all of you to share what your compulsive behaviors or addictions are, but you guys know what mine are. I had a compulsion or addictive behavior for intimacy, and it required me to like have problems with my relationships. I would seek out, other women to give me attention, interest me, to hug me, to connect with them. Why? It's because I had a hole in my heart, and I was seeking out of the others, and it was obsessive, right? And I remember talking to my therapist. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, there's this woman that I'm really attracted to, but I'm really happy in my relationship, but why am I so attracted? Like, I have these images of my head that she's just holding me, and like, why would you have that? He's like, and I talked to Gary Spolansky, my therapist, my shamanic empathic healer. He's like, Tim, it makes perfect sense. You see, you want to be hugged because you're looking for that motherly figure that you didn't have. And so when you see these women who are very loving and affectionate and motherly, you're drawn to that, you're attracted to that. And the moment that I was able to heal that, love myself and stuff like that, I was able to repair that relationship with my wife. Amazing, you know? So again, here are the questions to ask yourself. Do you have any addictive behaviors? Is it a mirror, right? But here is the bad or the negative consequence of addictive or compulsive behaviors. When you have this compulsive addictive behavior, you end up pushing away what you love the most. That's why this mirror is also another mirror of loss. When you do these addictive behaviors, what emotional pain are you avoiding, right? Some people take drugs, it numbs the pain, it gets them through. It's your job to discover what that is. And if you do have this addiction, what are you giving up by having this addiction, And guess what? It's oftentimes the thing that you love the most. And so what's going to happen with these addictions? What Greg Braden says, there's only going to be two outcomes. Either one, you're going to recognize that you have an addiction, you're going to release it, resolve it, and you're going to encounter that fear. And for me, I learned for that love. And guess what? I had to confront my fear, right? When I had to go through the Landmark Worldwide, I did the Landmark Forum, I transformed my relationships with my wife, but it took me the biggest fear is to be honest with her, to discover what that was. And I had to own up to my mistakes. And that meant confronting that fear that if I told my wife all about my infidelities, that she would leave me. So can you see how that was my biggest fear and manifested itself? And so hopefully that happens. Other times, your greatest fear just manifests, right, in your life, and it gets worse and worse by different degrees. And the longer you take to discover that compulsive behavior, the worse it's going to get, and you'll lose the thing that you love the most. Okay, I'm just very grateful that I was able to recover that. So five, six, seven, three more mirrors left. All right. So what's the fifth mirror? The mirror of the caretaker, the mother, father, creator. So here are the questions that you have to ask yourself. How do you describe your parents, right? Or your caretakers? Are they a mirror, according to Greg Braden, of the masculine feminine aspect of the creator, who some people call God, some people call it the universe, whatever it may be? And he does a workshop where he has people write down what are all their negative views of their caretakers, of their parents. And people write down angry, controlling, sick all the time, judgmental, abusive. And then he does another activity. Okay, why don't you write down all the positive views of your parents or your caretakers? Loving, nurturing, understanding, etc. And so what's really interesting for me is I had both. I had negligent parents, and so I could describe some negative things, but then I also had my grandparents take me in, and later on in life, in my teenage years, they became my positive role models. And so I do want to share with you this story that Greg Braden talks about the mirror of the caretaker. It takes about 2 minutes, and you can see this is a really old video. And you're more than welcome to watch Greg tell all these stories about these different mirrors. But I just clipped out this 2 minute clip, and you can see this is when he had a lot more long hair, right? Very, very old video. So check this out when he describes this mirror of the caretakers, the mother, father, the creator.
Did a workshop in Mount Shasta a few months ago, and we did this program, and we came to this part of the process. And there were about 230 people in the room, and there was a gentleman who raised his hand, and he said, "This is ridiculous. This does not work for me at all." So right there, I knew something was going to happen. And I invited him, and I said, "Are you comfortable sharing this with 229 other people in the room?" And he said, "Sure." He said, this mirror doesn't work for me at all. Just no way. And I said, tell me about your father. And he says, I don't know anything about my father. I never knew my father. He left before I was born. I don't know who my father is. And I said, tell me how you view your heavenly father. And he says, there is no God. I don't believe in God. And I said, the mirror stands. The mirror stands. By having no father in your life, the man that deserted you mirrored, even at that young age, your belief and your expectation that there is no father in heaven. And now your life path has been spent seeking to prove or disprove that. You now have had to come to terms within yourself as to whether or not there is a father in heaven. And by your father leaving you early in life, he pushed you to the edge of who you believed you were and asked you to redefine that. And he said, oh my God, it's the first time he had seen it that way.
Pretty cool, huh? We could talk a lot more about this, but I want to give you the final two mirrors and then give you some tools and action steps to help, release emotional triggers and help increase your self-awareness. Another mirror is called the mirror of the dark night of the soul. Okay. If you've heard about this term in different spiritual communities, they talk about it. It's about dealing with probably the hardest parts, the biggest amount of suffering in your life. So, in this example, it could be somebody who's been diagnosed with cancer. It could be other things. I definitely had experienced the dark night of the soul when there was a period of 5 years of my life where I didn't have any full-time employment. I was on my own. Like, how am I going to pay bills and stuff like that? Like we all have to face these really challenging, troubled times. So the dark night of the soul is you have to face this painful period of your life or a crisis of meaning. It's an intense suffering, a profound sense of disconnection from God's and one's purpose. And I can tell you, sometimes going through these experiences makes you actually turn to a greater, higher power, like they did in Alcoholics Anonymous, but you get to define that higher power whatever way you want. As I use the term in Electa Society, your higher self, the best version of you, right? And so, the only else that I'll share with you with this is that I can mention about Greg Braden, The Dark Night of the Soul. He shares another story of where he really tries to understand what evilness is, right? And he goes to this lake, stares at a fire, and in this fire he sees like the incarnation of evil, this demonic face, and like he was terrified of it, and he had to like face his fear, and it was like then rotated and it looked him directly into the eyes, and he's like, I'm not going to be afraid of it. And then what he ended up seeing is that face of this demonic figure then melted into like a sad boy and crying. And it was like Greg Braden had this epiphany. It's like, wow, why do some people who are cruel, mean, bullies, all these other things, is like probably deep down inside, people who do evil things, bad things, and again, not everybody, but it's like, is it coming from a place of hurt? Is it coming from a place of evil? Like, do we need evil in our lives and trials and tribulations only to discover the light? And so it's a very profound, deep question. But if I were to summarize what Greg Braden said, is like, yes, you need both the yin and the yang. You cannot appreciate love until you know what it's like to be heartbroken. And in order for us to become self-actualized and actually have to go through and grow, we actually do have to experience the dark night of the soul. We have to experience our shadows. We have to experience our greatest fears. And some of those things get to reveal that about ourselves. So again, just very interesting. We could go a lot more into it, but again, I just want to give you at least a high level overview of these mirrors. Now, the last mirror is the mirror of acceptance and perfection. Okay, so this is a very lovely image of a young woman looking at the mirror and loving and accepting herself. But this mirror is not always that case. Sometimes the mirror could actually be much darker, where you only see the imperfection in yourself, right? People with anorexia, and I'm actually going to play this little clip of Greg Braden, who tells this story about the mirror of acceptance and perfection. Let's show it to you right now.
The seventh mystery of relationship, the seventh Essene mirror, from the perspective of the ancients, was the most subtle and for some the most difficult. This is the mirror that asks us to allow for the possibility that each experience of life, regardless of its outcome, is perfect in its nature, regardless of whether or not we achieve the lofty goals that have been set by others. We're invited to view our accomplishments in life without comparing them to anything else, without any external reference. The only way that we may view ourselves in failure or success is when we measure our accomplishments to an external yardstick. And the question then arises, what is it that we hold ourselves accountable to? What is it that we use as our yardstick of accomplishment? From the perspective of this mirror, we're asked to allow for the possibility that all aspects of our lives, each aspect of our personal life, whether it's our body shape or our body weight, or our academic or business or athletic achievements, are perfect as they stand. And we will see that they are, in fact, that way, and can only be judged when they are compared to an external reference. We're invited to allow for ourselves to be that reference. The last mirror, the ancients considered the most subtle mirror. And to share with you this mirror, I'm going to share it in a couple different ways, a couple different stories. One of my last years in the corporate environment, I shared an office with a woman because our office space was limited. So we had very different functions and simply shared space together. And because there was no competition, we became very good friends. We just simply spoke with one another, went to lunch together a lot. One day we came back from lunch and she picked up her voicemail. And as she was listening to her messages, I saw her face turn sheet white and she sat down and I said, "What happened?" She shared with me a story. I'm going to share that story with you now to illustrate this mirror. She had just had a friend that was her age, had a young daughter. This daughter had graduated from high school just a couple of years earlier. A beautiful young woman, was extremely gifted in many areas. She was very athletic. She excelled at academics. She was a wonderful artist, and she chose to become a model when she graduated from high school, and her parents supported her in that choice. She had done some modeling, done very well. She had gone to as a modeling school in New York City and had just completed a series of jobs, and it appeared that 2 years out of high school, she was on her way to a pretty successful modeling career. Well, after the first couple of jobs, the modeling agencies began to say, for this kind of work, you'll have to change your appearance a little bit. And they started with some obvious things. And they, even at her young age, they did some tucks around her midline. They enlarged her breast, relatively common kinds of plastic surgery. Her parents supported her in that, and they said, well, that's what this industry takes. That's what it takes. Well, it wasn't long before the modeling agencies began asking for more extreme forms of modification. And for example, she had a really cute little overbite when she'd smile. And they said, well, you can't have an overbite and be a model. So they asked her, and she did, underwent a procedure where her jaws were broken and reset, wired shut. And the idea was that the overbite would be gone. And to be honest, I saw before and after pictures. I could see very little difference. I really could see very little difference. And I thought the overbite was kind of nice. But while her jaws had been wired, of course, she was on limited diet. She lost quite a bit of weight, and which is generally desirable in the modeling industry. And as she lost that weight, some of these ribs, the lower ribs, floating ribs, began to stick out more than they had before. And the modeling people said, well, that's no problem. We can address that surgically. And they did. They went in and took out these two floating ribs on either side. And something began to happen with her. And maybe you've seen this before. Body weight kind of goes in modes. I was a competitive runner for almost 20 years. And there were some times I could eat anything, no matter what it was. And I just couldn't keep weight on my body. And there were other times I could think about eating and not do it, and I would gain weight. And your body kind of goes into a mode. If you can stop eating for a while and you'll still maintain a constant weight, or maybe even gain weight. And you can begin to lose weight, and then you say, okay, well, that's enough. I'll start eating again. And your body is still in a lose weight mode, and it keeps going. And that's what happened to this woman. She began to lose weight and was in a lose weight mode. And the phone call that my friend had that morning was from the young girl's mother. Her daughter had just died in the hospital from complications of malnutrition in the hospital because her body could not assimilate that weight. And my question was, why did this happen? Why? What was it all about?
Wow. I think it's a really sad story, but it shows what could happen if you actually don't love yourself, right? And so here's the questions that you should ask yourself is, what do you use as a yardstick to measure yourself? Whether it's your success, your beauty, your academics, whatever area of your life, your athletic performance, your whatever it might be, your career trajectory. You usually your happiness or sadness is really connected to what you're comparing to what. And so again, my invitation for people has always been to never compare yourself to other people. Otherwise, you could be disappointed. But you could always, if you do have to compare yourself, always compare to something that could be worse, right? And so he basically helped you ask the question, how do you know that you're, Greg Braden asked the question, how do you know that you're not perfect the way you exactly are, right? And he says, if you're doing the best in this moment, you are perfect. And then something that I learned in Landmark Worldwide is like, we're all perfect just the way we are. We're perfectly imperfect to accept us and all of our imperfections. And it's what makes us unique, right? So again, I know it's a sad story, but it's important for us to help discover that mirror, to have that self-awareness, to stop judging yourself and comparing yourself to others. So those were all the seven Essene mirrors. So I'm going to end this presentation with some tools and action steps for all of you. So the first action step that I want to share with you is uncover your childhood trauma to release all these emotional triggers that are triggering you. Now, isn't that easier said than done? Absolutely. It is easier said than done. So that's why actually it leads me to the second action step is hire a life coach. Hire a therapist. It doesn't even have to be the traditional life coach or therapist. You can also go to an alternative healer, somebody who has a lot of experience. Like, for example, I told you I went to a shamanic empathic healer, Gary Spalansky, who's been doing this work for over 33 years to be able to release depression, emotional issues of trauma, abuse, and stuff like that. If that's something that resonates you, well, you're more than welcome to contact Gary. I provided his contact information right here that you could use. Just recommend Gary that I sent you or from Electus Society, and happily to give you a discount. Like he could even do virtual sessions with you. I think he charges for over an hour $125, but if you mention Electus Society, you watch this video or whatever it is, you can get it for $100. Again, I'm not getting anything as a referral from him. I really love Gary and he's transformed my life. But again, what he does is non-traditional. So you'd have to be open in terms of emotionally, spiritually to what he's doing. If that doesn't resonate with you, go see, just hire just a traditional therapist, somebody to talk to. Okay. The third way is to change your way of being. Remember, I used to talk about this in like level 1 and 2 of Electus Society and some of the previous trainings, is if you want to change your environment, it starts with your thoughts and your feelings internally. And so what does that mean? That means positive change starts with you. You do not like your current relationship. Stop blaming the other person. Focus on what you want to be and how you want to be, right? And I also use this analogy. There's two of them. One is to just imagine your emotions as like a mist in a room, that if you're in a room and you're vibrating love, then people in that room are going to feel that mist, and it's going to encompass them, and they're going to start being loving even though if you didn't even say anything. Another term I've used to describe it is tuning forks. If you're tuning and you're vibrating at this love or this frequency, well, then people around you are going to feel it. And you know what I'm talking about because you could just enter a room and you can feel the love or the hatred or judgment from people even if they haven't said a word. You could just feel it in the room. And so my question is, who do you want to be in that room? And so again, I really learned about this whole ontology, the studying the way of being from Landmark Worldwide. If you guys are interested, they do this 3-day course called the Landmark Forum. Again, life transformational for me. It costs like, I think around like $800 now. You could do it virtually online or in person. Again, I don't get any referral. I'm just very grateful for all the education that they gave me. It can be really transformative. But I did want to leave you with this one tool that I learned from them, and that is called what is a racket. If you don't know what a racket is something where you actually have the image of a grocery store, a convenience store, and it's pretending to be this big, it's a racket because outside it looks like just a regular convenience store, a general store. But reality, what's behind, what's the ugly truth? They're selling ammunitions, they're selling drugs, money's going back and forth. That's why they call it a racket. What's really happening out here is very different. What's really going on behind the scenes. And so Landmark taught me this concept that People have rackets. Whenever you have a persistent complaint about someone, something, guess what there is? There's a way of being that you are going to be because of that complaint. And you don't even realize it, right? And what you also don't realize is that you get a positive payoff, and it's actually ugly. What do you gain by complaining? Well, for some people, they felt self-righteous or whatever. But the reality is, by you having this persistent complaint, have this way of being, yeah, you may get this payoff, but what is the cost? There usually is a cost. It's something. You lose something. It's the negative result. And I can just give you a perfect example in my relationship. Going back to mirrors, right? My wife, I was really unhappy. I had this complaint that she was unloving, not kind to me, didn't want to be affectionate with me. And it was this persistent complaint. Why? Because it was an emotional trigger. It was a mirror. I didn't understand it at the time, but it's only through the self-awareness and some of the tools that you've been learning here that you really discover it. And what did I discover? My way of being. Whenever she would say, "Oh, Tim, can you massage my feet or whatever?" I'm like, "No, I'm not going to massage your feet. It's not like you're loving to me." Like I just allowed myself to be selfish, right? Because I was resentful or had expectations of her. She was supposed to be this way, and I didn't even realize it. And then what was I getting? What was the payoff that I got? Well, guess what? I could end up being flirty with other women, and I didn't have to tell her. I'm like, why? She's not being affectionate with me. So did you see how I rationalized, and I didn't realize that I was getting to be selfish. I didn't have to be truthful to her, and I could just continue my way of being. But what was the real cost? It was the loss of a relationship. I did not have a loving relationship with my wife. So that's my invitation for you is if you're being emotionally triggered or anything like that, or you have a persistent complaint about somebody, here's just one tool. What is your persistent complaint, right? My wife was not affectionate with me. What is your way of being? I was cold. I was distant. I was denying requests for her foot massages. So this is the one area that you can actually have control over. You can't always control the persistent complaint, but you can change your thoughts and your feelings and you can take 100% responsibility. But if you do this way of being, listen, there is a payoff. It's an ugly truth. I got to be selfish and the loss was my relationship. And so after I did this landmark course, guess what happened? I was able to heal the relationship with my wife. And I have this amazing story one time where we were in Colombia. I will end on this story where she and I were sitting on a beach sipping virgin pina coladas, and she's like, "I'm gonna go in the water." And she just got up and went into the water. And I was like so angry. I'm like, "You see this? She's so unloving. We have this romantic moment and she's ditching me." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I get to change my environment by what I think and what I feel. I can manifest whatever I want to." And so then I just say, "Okay, Tim, who do you want to be? How would you like to change? Like, how would you be different?" And I'm like, imagine my wife was a supermodel and she got up and walked into the water. Who do you want to be? Well, I want to be loving and I want to, oh, well, why don't you get up and go in the water with her? And I'm like, forget it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go into the water and I'm going to hold her. And it was one of the top 10 romantic moments in our relationships. We kissed and we hugged, enjoying the nature. That's all with you discovering that self-awareness, that changing your way of being. So I hope these action steps are helpful. Uncover your childhood trauma. Get a life coach, get a therapist, some kind of healer to help discover these issues, these triggers. Change your way of being and discover your rackets, that you have persistent complaints about people. And recognize that when you have a complaint about them, there's a way of being that you're being that you don't really, it's kind of ugly, but you get a benefit from it. It's a payoff, but there is a consequence. You lose something. So that's all the process of the self-discovery. This is another additional resource for you. It's a book called The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. I have not read it. This was a book that was recommended by Isa, but I do love Tony Robbins, and he actually wrote the foreword to this book. So I think that's pretty cool. So if you want to learn more about emotional triggers and stuff like that, this might be another resource for you. Again, I haven't read it yet. So at this point, we've ended our presentations. If you got to run, you got to run. If you have questions, I love to take them right now. Comments, I also welcome. If you fill out this form that's here, you can actually whatchamacallit, you can actually download a copy of this PowerPoint. Okay, so when I'm going to send out an email to the entire Electus Study community with this video, and it's also going to be on the YouTube link that you can click and give your feedback. So thank you so much, everybody. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And I'm just noticing in the chat, Kieran, I noticed that you wrote down about the mirror of perfection acceptance. Social media definitely has an impact. Yeah. How men perceive women, how women perceive men, and societal standards. Absolutely. Right. And how much, Kieran, of all that airbrushing and that photoshopping, and then people making them feel themselves like not perfect and comparing, how many people are on these weight loss drugs and stuff like that, and it's crazy. So absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Yanira, any final questions or comments? Was this helpful? Also, feel free to unmute yourself, Yomerly, if you got any value from it. I'd love to hear back from you.
Yeah, the different like mirror like
Hmm.
concepts, yeah, they were very interesting and
Hmm.
thoughtful.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And feel free to post any other comments in the chat. And let me know if you have any other questions. Okay, Yanir, I saw it. No questions. Everything was really clear and helpful. Awesome. I'll give you guys another 10 seconds to see if you have any questions or comments. Mm. For those of you who arrived a little bit late and didn't get to see the training, surely I noticed that what was something I can take away from someone who barely got here. Well, what I would say is the key takeaways from this is there are key emotional triggers that we experience all throughout our lives. There are people that upset us, anger us. And so to me, in order to be a conscious leader, you have to discover what is the source of those emotional triggers. Why is that person getting you angry? Why are they upset? I would definitely watch these videos because, in the end, if you can uncover what the source of that is, you can release that trauma. You can release it, and then that person will not no longer irritate or bother you. You know, one of the things that I always share with people is like if there's somebody that you find that you're judging, that you're really upset and angry with, and like so annoyed, like why do they do this? Why do they do that? Well, just what here's what I always say to myself is, guess what? If you grew up the same environment that they did and have they had their same exact experience, same exact upbringing, guess what? Chances are you would be exactly like them, you know? So that's what gives me the permission to really let go of my judgment towards people is because people are just doing the best that they can. You know, life is just a bunch of mirrors to help you discover yourself and who you want to be. You know, so I hope that's helpful, Shirley. Kieran, you have a question. I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is about there was a point in the training about um attracting yourself to a person that seems like similar to you or
Hmm.
it's connected to your like childhood trauma or something within them that makes yourself attracted to them. But what
Yes,
if,
it's the mirror of what's lost or given or taken away. This one. Why are we
yeah,
attracted to
that's what
people?
the mirror of loss, right? That's what
Yeah.
I was referring to. Yeah. But what if like you're initially attracted to someone and you explore that,
Hmm.
but then you realize like you're not the right match for that person and you have to move on.
Ooh. Yeah.
Then are you really losing anything from it because you initially tried to explore the relationship with that person, what you think you've lost from your childhood? Because eventually you would have to like heal from the pain and grieve the loss of that person to find something better. So like, did you really lose anything from initially exploring, or did you gain something better?
Great, great, great question. So here's what I gathered from what your question is. What you're talking about to me is two different things, right? One is, why are you attracted to some person, right? And again, this could be, there's a lot of reasons why you could be attracted to somebody. It could be their physicality, it could be their intelligence, it could be something like that. But what this mirror is, it's not black and white. This is just a tool to help be reflective. He's like, wait, there is a person that I'm meeting, and there's something about them that I'm really attracted to, right? And is there any reason why I'm attracted to it? And so all that Greg Baden is asking the question is it have does it have something to do with this charge that you get from this person? Is it something that you've really forgotten about yourself that you're missing? Is it something that you had been given away, like your freedom, your autonomy? Had it been something that was taken away from you, right? And so doing this is just a further mirror of that loss to remind you of that. But again, this is just one of the different mirrors. You can also just have healthy relationships where you're like, I'm just attracted to this person. I really like them. They're very good to know and stuff like that. I really want to get them in a
I meant
relationship.
like, what if it's like opposites attract though? You're not necessarily attracted to them, but it's just they somehow come into your life unexpectedly.
I
Like,
would
how
say
does that
one,
work?
I would say it's a blessing, right? Because if you have this attraction or desire to actually be with them, then I always invite you to call upon your higher self, the best version of you, do some meditation, write in a journal, ask your higher self, should I date this person? Should I be with this person? Like go ahead, do it. But then once you're in that relationship, if you no longer feel like it's an appropriate relationship and you break up with them, that's a loss, but that's just an ending of the relationship. Are you complete with that relationship? Did you learn the lessons from that relationship that you were meant to be? So I'm not going to judge. I have a sister-in-law who got into these different relationships, and my mother-in-law didn't like this boyfriend, and she's like, "Don't date him, don't date him." And I remember telling the mother-in-law, I said, "Who are you to tell her not to date him?" What if that's exactly part of her destiny that she needs to date him in order to have that life lesson experience? Who are you to take that away from him? And guess what? All she did was see herself and dating of the relationship she had in the past, and that guy reminded her of her past relationships. So do you see how this cycle happens? Ended up that the sister-in-law dated the guy. It didn't work out, but I was able to have good relationships with them because I didn't judge them, right? So it's okay to have that relationship and for it to end. But here's where I would caution you, Kieran, or anybody else, to say, what happens if you do not discover why you're attracted to that person or why that relationship ended, and you keep dating the same pattern of behavior of people and you're unhappy? It's maybe is because you haven't yet learned those lessons in that relationship. So I would forgive yourself for breaking up with a person. If it was not a right fit, then yeah, it's not a right fit. But what lessons did you learn from that? Is that helpful, Kieran?
Yeah, I think so. I think it answers both parts of my question, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, relationships are tough. I say that relationships are the PhD of personal development because you have another person who's really guiding you or challenging you, questioning you, and you have to kind of humble yourself. Is what this person saying about me true? Maybe they can see myself a part about me that I can't see in myself. So I find relationships very, very challenging, but I'm very grateful for them. And so again, this mirror is just about attraction. That there are some reasons why you're attracted to people. It's You can separate it from relationship in itself. He was just using that mirror for as another mirror for self-discovery. Okay. Thanks so much for Kieran for that question. Let me just see if there's any other thoughts. Okay, in treatment, they said that when you are upset at someone who you barely meet in your house and you're annoyed at the things the person you see it in yourself. Absolutely. Surely that's the mirror. Yanira has to go. Nice to share with all of you. Thanks so much, Yanira. We're over time, so thank you everybody who watched this training, and thank you for everybody who's going to be watching the video of this training. I look forward to see you guys in the next training. Have a great night. Have a great week, and we'll touch base soon. Good night. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching this video clip about conscious leadership. If you are committed to helping to create more conscious leaders in this world, that is leaders with more humility, more integrity, more awareness, that take constructive action, then consider helping us by making a donation. Our goal is to have 600 conscious leaders develop before the end of this year. Currently, as of December 1st, we already have 400 members. And again, with your help, we can grow even further. How can you help us? Simply make a donation. If you visit buymeacoffee.com/Electus Society, you can either choose to give a monthly donation and join, and you get different access to a lot of these different membership benefits, or simply make a one-time donation. Click on the heart support button, choose 1, 3, 5, or type in any number of amount of coffees, hit the support button, and you can upload your card information on the secure platform. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and let's continue our mission of building more leaders. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.